dragon coming to the prison and y'all don't pay me enough for this. Hey guys, it's your girl Aisha, aka Geek XX Chic, and we are back with another reaction to Invincible. We're now on season 3, episode 5, which is called This Was Supposed to Be Easy. So in the last episode, Nolan finally broke out with Alan. I think that was the highlight of the episode for me. Nolan has finally accepted the fact that he's just not the kind of Viltrumite that he was raised to be, that he actually has changed and that he wants to actually help Earth and see what he can do to right some of the wrongs that he is now fully regretting. So that's good news. He also dropped the bomb that a lot of us have speculated, I mean those of us who haven't read the comic, that is, which is that Viltrumites have been reduced to a very small number. We found out that there's less than 50 across the galaxy, which means that it's absolutely possible to defeat them. So Nolan is going to be working, I guess, with that knowledge and seeing what we can do to spread that info so that more places can work together to overthrow Viltrum before too long. And then on the other side of things, we got to see what was going on with the people who came from the future. Turns out that in another reality, I'm going to say it's another reality, but some people are saying it's the same future, but I don't know. Anyways, these people from the future, turns out that the Immortal went bad and basically Mark had to go back and take out the Immortal in order to get the Earth from being under his tyranny, quite frankly, that he'd created to keep humanity under control. So anyways, because of that whole situation, Mark began to question whether or not he is in fact the good guy here, because he keeps seeming to be put into positions where he's got to do things that he would have never done, let's say maybe a year ago or so. So anyways, those are the main things that happened. Ready to jump into this episode, and hopefully, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out whether or not we're going to get a Nolan Mark interface this season. It's probably still too soon, but I am very curious to find out. So let's jump into the episode. But just before I do, a reminder that if you'd like to be in the know of when I drop episodes, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell. All right, that out of the way, let's get into the episode right now.
She's growing taller every day.
You spoil her, Amir. Just remember.
And she deserves to be spoiled. Oh, this is the gangsters. I mean, the guys from last episode from the silent tableau. I can't remember. Did they show us whether or not they can just pull them back in? Or once they're out, they got to be killed? Damn, I'd be sick of myself. I couldn't do all that. But yeah, I guess they could do sheer force. Oh my God. Is it worth it, Paul? Damn, interesting. Very different perspective, hey? Because we heard Kate say that it was traumatic for her every time that these, her doubles died. And he seems to be unaffected. Did they really never think of that with Multi-Paul as a possibility for him to do to break out? Prison is utterly useless. I'm sorry. Like, you should know that a man like him would do something like potentially create so many of himself that he would bust out. So why do you not have some form of an inhibitor cuff on him? Or, I don't know, just have him completely strapped down constantly and sedated. Damn, he's fast. I think he's faster than Kate from the looks of things. Finally. That should have been on him all the time. That should have been on him constantly. Yeah, no more of that. Sorry, but I'm surprised inhibitors didn't exist before this.
I was this close to convincing Cecil to put you on a team to make up for all the shit you've done.
Does he want to?
Doesn't matter.
Of course it matters.
No, it doesn't matter because he's going to get broken out.
They're not your friends. They use you. That's why you're in here, and they're not.
They don't care.
Do you think Cecil and the GDA and the Guardians are any different?
I mean, it's true.
You know, it's Dad's birthday this week.
Oh, you have parents? Can your parents do that too?
I went to see him last month.
Yeah, I guess that would be overwhelming.
How is he?
Still traumatized, clearly.
It wasn't his fault, Paul.
Used.
You let them take us, use us, turn us
did he
into
look
their
like he was
weapons.
okay?
You shouldn't have left.
Well, I mean, if he didn't want to be there, you did.
You should have come with me.
So there's the divide. I was wondering if they were twins. They are.
At least they're honest about who they are.
Are they?
And they pay better.
That part would be true.
You're a murderer.
So are you.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's really not the leg you want to stand on there, Kate.
You really think I could just leave the order?
Yeah, you don't, it's kind of a one sin, never out sort of thing with these
Yeah.
types of gangs.
Just like your GDA. They don't abandon tools they're not done with yet.
That is true. You're both in gangs. I'm sorry. One just happens to be respectable by society standards.
You're right. He's still growing.
It's weird. Someone's at the door.
You mean he's still growing? We know. Like, he doesn't stop.
I like it too, but can't live at home forever.
Forever, bro. You're 19. Okay.
Imagine having someone of that caliber just a text away 24/7.
Should we start talking about the implications of selling your services to the highest bidder? Interesting. Interesting that this is the idea they're coming up with. I wonder who would have maybe looked at the wider, deeper moral and, political implications of selling your super skill, your super set of abilities to the highest bidder.
I hired a team to do it, but the job went sideways.
Then try again.
No.
No.
Respectfully.
Find a way to get my assassin back.
Or
You have 24 hours.
I
hear little Fiona's becoming quite the entrepreneur.
oh, you threatened his family. Well, you got two options here.
Fiona!
Daddy?
He knows your weak spot, bro, but I don't know what to tell you. You got two options. Either fall in line and let them use that forever, or you step on his neck.
You're staying at home with your mom until I tell you otherwise, got it?
Am I in trouble?
Honey, what's going on?
Not in front of the children. Just saying, that's the hard thing with this type of life, right? You got two options. You either let them use your family as the thing that they always dangle in front of you to make you do things you shouldn't want to do or don't want to do or shouldn't do. Or you find a way to slap back a lot harder and let everyone know to never come for your family again.
Mark, wake up!
For the love of God.
If Liu wants multi-paw so bad, why doesn't he go get him himself?
Exactly.
If you're gonna play ball with the order or not. If you're gonna be a good boy and do as you're told.
Exactly.
But he was always angling for Liu's seat. Wanted to run the order himself. And there ain't a game more dangerous than that.
Okay. We can work with that.
What if someone took him? Could be whoever was spying on us.
Respectfully, Mark, who could take your brother at this point? Really? Who could take him?
Shit, do I need to call Cecil? He's got cameras everywhere.
Oh, you mean Cecil, who's so helpful? But no, you don't need his stupid help, right? Oh, so these kids don't care that he's purple. Progress. He'll be fine. You know he heals in like 2 minutes.
But I almost did it. I'm gonna do it again.
Right attitude.
He made friends. Like normal friends.
I'm glad that they don't care about,
just-
the fact that he doesn't look like everyone else. It's refreshing.
It's past your bedtime.
Okay, Oliver.
Uh-uh. We were here
Oliver,
first.
breathe.
Get lost!
Ooh, watch out. He's getting mad.
Oliver?
Can he? No, okay. Thank you.
What the fuck?
Better. Whew. Might be hope for Oliver yet.
He's a good kid, Mark.
He's got good in him. Let's put it that way for now. I'm still watching this kid. Rex, leave you a little present. Yep. Why is Rex oddly endearing? Oh, he remembered what she said about having a home-cooked meal. He can actually be thoughtful when he wants to be.
You said it was something you wanted to do. Like have a
He
normal
actually
dinner,
remembers
so-
stuff sometimes.
I thought you said you didn't cook.
He doesn't, clearly.
Full disclosure, it's from a meal kit.
As it
Turns
should
out
be.
I can follow instructions when I want to.
Didn't I just say?
So remember when the Immortal told us to grab our stuff and get out of Guardians HQ?
You grabbed his stuff.
I may have also grabbed some of his stuff.
I mean, he already experienced it when it was actually fresh when it came out, so it's fine.
Such a good year. Other than the incurable diseases and tooth decay and people never taking showers.
It may have oxidized. I kind of had that when I saw the pieces of cork falling out. Not a good sign, Rex.
You know that none of this is normal.
It is for you guys.
But it's still good. Thank you.
Look at that. First base reached. All right. I don't hate it. I do think that Rex has grown a little bit, though, between his relationships with Eve and seeing how Kate responded to everything. I think he's starting to slowly but surely realize that he needs to be a little bit more attentive to the women that he's seeing or the ones that he wants to see if he actually doesn't want to end up ruining yet another relationship.
You think this place knows anything about maintaining a piece of quality machinery like me?
But clearly they have your auto-tune intact.
I'm missing my computer classes. How else am I going to learn Microsoft Word and get a job in a fucking office?
It hurts me that it's still true.
I hope Mr. Liu turns into that giant snake and eats you for dinner. He does that. I'm serious. I saw it once. It was I almost want to forgive you just for that moment. But to be clear, I don't.
We get it. We get it. You're bitter.
You better report him to HR. The order takes these things very seriously.
Your feet are looking pretty good, though. Who's giving you a pedicure in here?
You still think I'm just some dummy from the streets?
Because he's a dummy.
Like I said, they don't know how to maintain a guy like me in here.
They didn't make fun of him for, being purple?
Not those ones.
You're sure he was having fun?
Yeah, Mom. I know
The
what
fun should be
looks like.
fairly recognizable, Debs, and if you can't, then maybe you need to get out more.
You can always call me or Eve. Do we really want to stop him from being a kid?
No, but he's not a normal kid, so we need to be aware. This guy again? You learned nothing.
I never got to thank you for almost getting me killed.
Oh.
We need to talk.
We really don't.
A lot of people are gonna die.
Okay, I'm not falling for that again.
But did he lie last time?
Let you put hands on me if it wasn't life or death. You think I'm that stupid?
Right? Like, please? Mark does. But it's so cute. I would have been swooning.
No more murders or crime except for yours.
That's not how I run things.
It isn't, thus far.
You heard of the order? Or Mr.
Of course
Lee?
not.
If I don't break Multipole out from prison, they're gonna kill me and my family and do it themselves.
Multipole's a murderer. I'm not letting you break him out.
Okay.
We're not doing this.
Okay.
Thought you superheroes cared about saving lives.
Ooh, hit him with that line.
You're not getting away.
Oh, can you not tell us apart, Mark?
We all look the same to you here?
I knew it was coming. Unfair. Do you know who would have been great to talk to you, Mark, about this particular situation and these people who come from a completely different background and, social economic place than you? I'll leave it there.
And working with him is only going to drag you down to his level.
Sure.
Sorry, Titan. Nothing personal. I just like breathing.
What to say? You had to know he wasn't going to stay faithful, right? That is a pretty neat trick, I'm not going to lie. He just got that off his fix, too, after that superhero fight. Oh, it's a channel. Interesting. Don't forget the snake, bro. Go for the host.
God, my body.
Where is he going? Oh, is he going to go get him himself?
Warden?
There's a dragon coming to the prison and y'all don't pay me enough for this. Yeah, I would have quit that job so long ago. It was not worth it, sis.
What?
Titan wasn't lying.
Yeah.
I screwed up.
You did.
I don't want you getting hurt because I made a mistake.
She's fine. Damn, what did those prisoners do? Unnecessary collateral damage. I really hope Titan's not dead. But he did decide to try to come up in the underworld, and unfortunately that comes with consequences. And see, Mark, if you'd been with Titan from the get-go, you would know that the dragon has a host, and if you take out the host, you take out the dragon, but, Well, the face still looks good. Alright, guess he's determined. Ma'am, just make a box in the whole place. What are you doing? Thank you. Yeah, you deserve that, Eve, because I don't know why you didn't do that from the first time you saw that this kid could split off. You should have turned just the entire place.
I will show you the error of your name.
That's a bar. I'm not gonna lie. That's a bar. In another episode of Mark getting his ass handed to him.
You're a fictional creature, dude.
That was a flash of light. What was that? Did someone get teleported out?
Eve.
Is that enough?
We gotta charge more than we're charging.
Yeah, I was about to say you should never... What did you tell that kid back in episode 1?
I am made from.
Right, like you don't celebrate too early?
But I am gonna kill your boss.
That sucks. Saved by a gangster, Mark?
like
Wow! Bye.
Machine Head wanted
Smart.
the dragon to eat you before he killed Mr. Liu. But I figured I owed you one.
Okay.
Ew. I'm taking you to jail.
What jail? We're here.
Nah.
Who's gonna contain us?
Thanks for the help, hero.
Right?
Doing good even if you didn't mean to.
Right? Like, it's so sad that he had to trick you into helping him.
What else could you have done? You couldn't let Titan break Multi-Paul out of prison.
No, that's not... Okay.
It just doesn't feel right to leave my mom to look after him by herself. He's my
That's
responsibility.
fair. Yeah, he's super. You actually didn't have your powers at that age, so you were somewhat manageable.
I have been feeling like things were moving kind of fast.
You think?
Oliver deserves to be a kid. He's different, but he's
For now,
just a
like he's
kid.
only gonna be a kid for probably like another week, so yeah.
Not getting an apartment anymore.
Oh, thank God.
Facts, Deb.
I mean,
Exactly. I mean, oh.
The biggest thing I've come to learn about adulthood is that nothing is ever black and white.
Thank you.
By the way, just have to say it. I know you and Eve are having
Right?
sex.
Jesus.
Behind the proverbial woodshed, and let's be honest, shot him in the fucking head. That entitles me to a seat, and therefore the primo position in the order. Any objections?
Can we take the auto-tune out of your voice?
You all get everything else. But I'm out. We good?
Take your toys and go home. We don't want you in our super special secret club anyway. Backstab me again, and I'm gonna drown you in your kid's blood while I tear off your wife's skin and eat her heart. Smarter than you think, even for someone who's 50% rock. All right.
Well, at least he got the respect in that respect. I mean, the man's been smart. I don't know if that's a true deal. I wonder. But maybe that's just their little agreement since he did get him out of prison. He's out. And he's letting you know he's out. Great Wall survived? Damn. So he's not dead. But they did say it wasn't easy to kill him. Oh, he can like transfer the souls and ish? Is that what happens? That's pretty cool. And it also makes sense. Someone like that is not going to let themselves be so vulnerable that just taking out his body would be enough. Not if he's got any brains, which clearly he does. Okay, guys. Well, that was an interesting episode. I think we're continuing down this path of Mark trying to kind of maneuver this world that he's trying to foray into of his independence from Cecil and trying to grow up and not having his dad or any of the perceived influences that he thought were kind of trying to control him in his way, but continuing to discover that life is not as easy as he might have thought. And interestingly, this episode was called This Was Supposed to Be Easy, but yeah, none of it is. The biggest scam we're sold growing up is that life is, once you become an adult and no longer have to be listening to your parents, that suddenly the world's super easy, you get to do what you want and everything's great. Yeah, no. The hard truth is that it's hard out here. It's very, very hard out here. And the older you get, the more you realize that a lot of things that you would have thought when you were young were very much black and white, yes or no, right, wrong, up, down. They don't always come as clearly as one thinks. And it's not to say that there aren't things that are, in my opinion, non-negotiably good or bad, but it becomes more of as you get older, you start to understand that circumstances and situations and all kinds of different factors can affect someone's decisions or ability to make good decisions in a certain situation, and that those do have a bearing on what you think of that person, their character, and how severely they should potentially be punished for making a choice that was not a good choice. So that's kind of what you learn as you get older, but when you're young, you don't have the experience of that, right? You're still discovering discovering the way the world works. And it's very easy to be hyper judgmental of people for making decisions that you don't agree with. But then, as I said, as you get older or go through different experiences, you start to understand why or how some people got to the place that they did. Even if it wasn't necessarily a choice you would still make, even knowing what you know. And so we saw that in the episode where we got Cecil's background, we got to understand why Cecil made the decisions that he did, right? Like, he was like Mark. We discovered he was very much like Mark at one point, very black and white, very good and bad. This is the way you do it, this is the way you don't do it. But as he began to get older, experience more things, see the scope of what his former director was dealing with, the levels and how complex and heavy it is, he began to understand that as much as he would love to make such, such standardized decisions, it just isn't possible at that scale and that level. Like, it just isn't the way that the world is now. So anyways, coming back to this episode, we see that, we'll talk about Oliver first, because that's kind of the shorter part of this episode. Oliver is continuing to grow, which, they should know that by now. I don't know how long it's been in the show. I think it's been like 6 months since last season, but point is, Oliver's grown insanely. And obviously way more time than a human would, right? In human years, he should still be a baby, but he's already, like I said, 10, 11 years old, maybe 12 years old, Earth years, and he's going to be continuously growing. We don't know exactly when he'll stop because, of course, with the Viltrumite blood, it's kind of skewing the numbers of what Thraxans are like, but I think we could just assume that, like I said already, that potentially by the end of this season, Oliver's going to be at the very least a teenager, if not an adult. So he's constantly growing. And so anyways, Debbie is understandably trying to wrap her head around this, which makes sense. She's already raised a child, but a human child, or one that grew up at least as a human for the first half of his life. So she has no frame of reference of how to raise an alien baby, especially one that grows at like 10 times the rate of a human. And so when she sees that Oliver is snuck out in the middle of the night, she's understandably scared because Oliver, as we can see, is very impetuous. He does not always think before he acts. He doesn't feel the need to check in before he makes certain decisions. And because of his abilities, he's able to be a little bit more rebellious than the average kid, right? Like most kids at that age, you can, and how do I say this without making it sound like it's weird? You can somewhat restrain their activities, if that makes sense. I'm not saying you like chain them up or anything, but you get my point. Physical size and strength do have a factor, right? There's a reason you can keep your kids in when they're younger. And again, you're not doing it because you want to hinder them. You're doing it because you're trying to protect them, right? Typically letting a kid go out, especially a younger kid, at night is highly dangerous. Not for necessarily because of them, but because of the other people out there. But with Oliver, it's a combination of the fact that he's very young, very naive, very trusting. And what's more is that now after last episode, we know that he's also very quick-tempered and he is capable and willing to take life, right? Yes, they have their little heartwarming talk, but let's face it, Oliver's kind of let them know one way or another that he doesn't 100% agree with that life shouldn't be taken if he thinks it's the right thing to do. So anyway, we see the panic that immediately ensued with Mark because he saw Oliver, he saw what happened. He knows that his brother has said some very morally worrying things when it comes to life taking. So, his real fear with Oliver going out was that he might do something crazy. And that should tell Mark already that there's something very off here, that he needs to really be slowing down and thinking a lot more about what he's doing and how he's handling things. But anyway, thankfully that turned out to just be Oliver making friends because we saw that, Debbie, bless her heart, was trying to keep Oliver away from people because he was scared. She was scared of how they would treat him because he clearly looks different. Most people will look at him and know, well, he looks human, but for the skin. But you know what I'm saying? Like, she knows how cruel children can be, unfortunately. And I think she's just obviously trying to protect him. But that's a great life lesson, though. Obviously, we don't typically have people in our world that have purple skin, but there's a plethora of things that can go on with a person that can cause them to look different, whether it's an illness or a condition or something that they're dealing with. And, as parents or family members, I think our instinct is to want to maybe hide them away because, again, we know how utterly cruel the world can be. But by trying to protect them like that, you are also cutting them off from being able to form beautiful connections with people. And by and large, I feel that most people are inherently good. There are bad apples and sadly they tend to sour a lot of our opinions, but by and large, most people do have kindness and gentleness in their heart, especially towards other kids. And kids, while they can be incredibly cruel, most of the time they're actually quite accepting. And so the point being, we see that Oliver did manage to find two friends and they share a love for skateboarding and that he has told them everything. Like, he's been 100% honest with them. He's like, yep, I've got purple skin. Yep, I can fly. He's not trying to hide anything. thing, and they've accepted that. And I mean, in this world, I mean, we're not talking about a world like ours where that's freakishly weird, right? They live in a world where there are fish people, and there's an Invincible, and there's there's cat people who can fight, who come to Earth. Point being, this planet is seeing some stuff. So a purple kid who can fly is really not the weirdest thing that can happen in this world of Invincible. So yeah, he's just another kid who's a bit different than everybody else, and he happened to find some friends that don't care about that. So that's good, and I do think that Oliver needs to make those kinds of connections, because that could be another reason why Oliver is so okay with taking life, because he really hasn't met anyone outside of Mark and his mother and his nanny who he really has to care about. But if he starts to maybe make those connections and see that other humans can still have an effect in his life and become people he can care about, then maybe that will help him tap into a sense of empathy and not want to just, you know, willy-nilly take life the way he was talking about before. But anyways, that was all well and good. So that's pretty much Oliver. They basically said, you know, like Debbie said, now going forward, I'm going to give him a little bit of space. Like, let's give him a little bit of a rope and see what he does with it. I still think they should definitely keep an eye on him. And I think that's why Mark said, like, let me stick around, because I think really, he didn't say it to his mom, but I think that Mark is still a little bit worried about Oliver because of those things he said, that Viltrumite streak that came through him so strong, considering he spent like only the first 3 months of his life with his dad. So I do think that Mark just wants to keep an eye on him, just to be sure that in case he does get into a situation where he loses his temper or feels threatened, that he doesn't do the worst, because he's capable of it. And he's so young too, that, you know, it's at that age, we all tend to be very reactionary and we don't think about the consequences of our actions, right? That's part of growing up. We learn that as we get older. So anyways, that's pretty much Oliver, which is, you know, like I said, small and pretty nice. Other than that, not much to say about the Mark and Eve thing. I think I've made it pretty clear. I don't really have much to say about their relationship. They're pushing it hard. It's going way too fast. I'm glad they called it out at the end, but honestly, we didn't need it. Like, I don't know how many seasons they planned for this show, but they could have done more from season 1 to establish a connection and a level of intimacy and knowing, etc., with these two, to make this progression of their relationship now make more sense. Because as it stands, based on what we got in season 1 to what we're seeing now, I'm sorry, it's making Mark look more and more like, and that he used Amber for no reason at all. He didn't need to do that. And that doesn't make me think better of him in this relationship. But that's me. And I know some people are big stans of the relationship. So I love that for you. It's not for me. But anyways, that's pretty much all that happened, was that they were moving way too fast, and thankfully they pumped the brakes, because yeah, like, first of all, Mark is 19. Second of all, knows nothing about actually taking care of himself or doing anything. This is all just because he wants to get laid, which, I mean, as his mom told him at the end, bro, I already know. Like, as long as you don't get too crazy in there, you do you. You know, you're an adult. But anyway, that was that. But then we see that they were also realizing that Mark's like, I don't have a job. I don't have income. I'm not in school. So how do I make money? Because now that he's not working for Cecil anymore, I mean, I don't think Cecil was even paying him that much. But anyway, he's like, I have no money. So they decided to basically become heroes for hire. And, you know, they kind of talked about this theme on a few levels here, with first with Multipole and Duplicate, and now with Mark and Eve. This idea of, like, are we being used? And if we're being used, should we at least take it into our hands the way that we're used, right? And so in the case of Mark and Kate, Kate's like, look, why don't we just, you know, hire ourselves out? Like, we have these skills. Places like prison systems, one of the most lucrative systems in the United States, and probably other very high-ranking people are probably willing to pay a big amount of money to have someone of our skills be their own private security or problem solver. And so it does make sense on a financial side of things, of course, but like I said, it introduces a lot of moral issues, and I don't think Mark has really thought about that, the implications of who you work for. I mean, yes, the prison system seems legitimate enough, but they're privately owned, and that means that you could get wardens that absolutely have their own agendas, want to do things a certain way. And what happens if maybe they want Mark to go and capture somebody or to do something in order to help facilitate further success of their prison? When does Mark get to say, oh, this is not right anymore? When does he get to say that it isn't right if he's working in the best interest of his clients, right? I don't think he's thought that far ahead, and I know Eve definitely hasn't, right? Eve's in the past just made money for herself, right? She's just materialized, remember, golden apples last season to give to her dad. She can make money, literally, if she wants to. So there's no concept here, and this is what I said about the two of them just being an echo chamber of superpowered, like, children that are just feeding off of each other's silliness. Like, it's not not the kind of relationship that is good for either of them without a check and balance in place. And Mark's mom is not enough because she doesn't affect Mark the same way. He listens to his mom, yes. But anyways, you already heard me in the episode. I just think that, especially when it came to the situation with, in the case of our main villain here, the guy with the rock face, I can't believe his name just slipped out of my head. That whole situation could have been handled so much better if he had the right person in his ear. Which I feel like, let's just dovetail into that whole situation with, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, I cannot remember the name of our main villain, but our half cement villain there. We see that, you know, he took over. We found out back in season 1 why he did what he did, right? He involved Mark, brought Mark into this whole situation where he said it was to do one thing when really his objective was to take over a crime syndicate, which, as you can imagine, is, you know, not what Mark wanted to do at all when he was just starting out in his superhero journey. And of course, we know that Mark got a spanking in that fight as well. But all the same, you know, Amber back then tried to somewhat explain to Mark that, you know, he really doesn't understand how life works in different parts of where he lives, right? He grew up in an upper middle class neighborhood. He has always had privilege. He's always had access. He's always, you know, had the safety of his dad. But we even found out in season 1 that his father very much was kind of like, I don't really, you know, this kind of stuff is low level to me. Like, bottom line is, even if Nolan, outside of the morality of helping a gangster, Nolan would not have helped the people in that neighborhood because they didn't matter to him, right? Like, it was just kind of like it was beneath him. So that's the sort of world that Mark grew up in, and that's fair, right? He had no control over that any more than the people who grew up in that neighborhood did about that. But that's where Amber came in and was able to, you know, through that volunteer work that she did and all those things she talked to Mark about. But listen, Mark, there are all kinds of people in this city, all kinds of people in this world, and the way for you to kind of find out more about them is you need to like talk to the people who are from those places. You need to, or should be, expanding your horizons, your friendship circle, all those kinds of things, so that you have different kinds of people from different backgrounds who can help you to understand what you will not intrinsically understand because of where you're from, right? And this is important because, especially for someone like Mark, who will be asked for help in some kind, like, it's not just, this guy wasn't the only one who's ever going to ask Mark for help, right? Since season 1, he's had people asking him to help out with things. And the more powerful Mark becomes, the more influential he becomes, the more people are going to start asking him for aid. The more they're going to be people who are going to look to him to ask him for help or some sort of, you know, assistance or something. And Mark's going to have to always make these decisions, right? It's never going to go away where he's going to have to look at a situation and decide whether or not it's the right thing to do to step in or not. But one of the ways that he can figure out whether or not it is a good idea and whether or not it's something that could be beneficial or how it could be beneficial is to better understand what's going on and the people involved and the situation and the community and the environment, right? And that's where, as I said, back in season 1, Amber tried to explain to Mark that, hey, you know, I understand you have this black and white view of the world, but you have to understand that when people are in a different environment, different community, different circumstances, what they consider to be possible or the ways to achieve things may not be the way that you would do it or the way that you would have to because of where you're from and what you know and what you have, right? So all of that to just understand that this character from back in season 1, like, did he go about things necessarily the right way? Many would argue no, but we can understand his desperation and why he wanted to do it. And as he showed Mark when he took him through the streets, he said, look at the difference of this neighborhood. He's like, when it was under Machine Head, this place was a den of crime. Everything was unsafe. People were scared to be outside. And again, he's like, this was my neighborhood. These were my people. This is where I'm raising my child. And he's like, I was looking at the government. I was looking at the police. I was looking at superheroes to help, and nobody did anything. Everyone turned a blind eye while Machine Head turned this into his own personal, you know, crime bed. So I did what I thought I had to fix it. And for all intents and purposes, that's what he did. He cleaned it up. He made it a safe place. He made it a place where people who looked like him and people from his community would feel safe and be able to prosper and thrive. And it sucks that he had to go through the avenues that he did, but he said last season, we tried all the other proper avenues and they didn't work. So, and that's what Amber kind of had to like make Mark understand, is that you don't get to judge everybody on what they do until you understand the path that they've walked, right? And so that in this situation, when this guy came to Mark again in and basically went to the prison just to get Mark's attention. We see there that if Mark had someone, and again, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, I think that if Amber was the person who was by his side, or at least someone that he was still close friends with, she could be the person that would have talked to Mark to be like, hey, Mark, I know you're feeling about this as far as the right and wrong of it all, but maybe you should hear him out and figure out what's going on here and maybe start to look at the overall ramifications of what happens if you step back and do nothing, right? Because I'm not going to say that Mark was wrong not to help him, because it's true. This man is still a criminal. Technically, he's still a criminal. He's asking you to help him figure out how to help another criminal, right? That goes against what Mark believes to be a good thing. But I can tell you this right here and now, that if Cecil had been given this offer, Cecil would have worked with the crime lord, because he would have realized that the overall ripple effect of what was going to happen, that it made more sense to help him than to step back. Because here was the reality of this situation. While there was not a quote unquote good move to make in this situation, there was a right one. And the right one would have been to help him. Why? Because one way or another, there was going to be mayhem. There was going to be some form of crime happening no matter what Mark did, right? If Mark's indecision, no matter what, whether he worked with him or not, the order was going to make a move on the prison, right? In one way or another. If that move was going to be through the crime lord guy, or if it was going to be, what was his name? Ironjaw breaking in with his dragon. One way or another, that prison was going to be broken into. So what Mark, if he had been, I feel like if he'd had some more perspective from somebody else who could have shown him that there was a different way or different way to be looking at this, the way that the crime lord was trying to show him by showing him how the neighborhood had cleaned up and how much safer it was, how the people were happier, how there actually was a benefit to him being there. Maybe then Mark could have seen that helping him out, or at least working with him, they could have potentially found a solution. Because here's the thing, we all know that crime boss did not want to get Machine Head out of prison. He didn't want that. He wanted Machine Head to stay exactly where he was. He only went to Machine Head when Mark refused to listen, right? So I think that it was kind of one of those things where if Mark had been willing to listen, truthfully, had been willing to listen, maybe he and that guy could have come up with a solution or some kind of a plan that would have kept Machine Head in jail and incapacitated Ironjaw, right? That could have happened, but because Mark was still in this whole, I know it's right for everybody and I don't want to hear it, what ended up happening? How many prisoners died? Right? Like, I mean, I know in the end that Adam Eve tried to just sweep it all under the rug of, oh, I rebuilt the prison. No one got out, even though Multipole did. Everything's fine. You did the right thing. No, actually, a lot of people died. And yes, maybe they were inmates, but they were still people. Innocents that didn't have to die necessarily. Invincible also almost died as well, because once again, he overestimated how good he was and also went into the fight completely cocky and unprepared. He probably could have learned so much about the way that this dragon moved and everything like that if he'd worked with this man. But again, I don't work with criminals. Sir, that's not like for the greater good. For the greater good, we could have avoided so much. But because of this viewpoint that you have, this stubbornness that you have at the moment, so much more damage is happening than good. And I love that at the end, when Debbie was talking about, you know, how growing up and changing and doing things, like basically how she said that the more you get older, the more you realize that decisions just can't be black and white. That's just not the way the world works. There's times when things are in the gray area and that's just the way it is. Mark needs to learn that sooner than later. And he needs to learn that for everyone, because he definitely is hypocritical. Like Cecil said a couple episodes ago, Mark's gray area is very wide when it comes to his family and to his dad and to himself. But for other people, suddenly that gray zone goes away. And that part's where it gets a little bit like, that's interesting. So anyway, that's kind of all I want to say about that situation. I think Mark could have handled it a lot better. I think that he needs to learn to be a little bit more open. And again, I just think that if he had a bit more of a diverse friend group that he was spending more time with, they could help him to get that perspective that he just doesn't have. And again, because he's no longer at school, he's barely hanging out with his bestie anymore. I can't remember his name right now, the one who's in love with the robot. And he, again, doesn't even talk to Amber anymore, which is sad that that's what happens with breakups. But Amber was absolutely the person that would have been the most helpful for him on this particular case this week. But anyway, so that was that. And then outside of that, we had a little bit of history on Duplicate and Multipole. We now know that I was always wondering if they were twins. I wasn't sure, but I'm thinking that's what it is. It looks to me like they were twins. And yeah, looking at their flashback, their poor dad. Clearly their father had no idea that his kids would have this ability. I'm assuming he didn't have that ability. There was no mom that we saw, so I don't know what happened there. Maybe she had a similar ability. I'm not sure. In fact, this world has never really explained whether or not the people who have abilities, whether it's genetic or not. But anyway, like as in like, if I don't know, if you can fly, that your kids automatically can fly too, if you know what I mean. But anyway, but seeing that history, that looks like that potentially, and the thing is, we don't know if their dad was ever okay beforehand, but I think something must have happened. I'm assuming that his kid's abilities just broke his mind at some point and he just basically lost it. And when that happened, Cecil and his people found these twins. They zoomed in, took them, and basically turned them into weapons. And we see that they had differing opinions on what that experience was like. We see that for Kate, she believes that their being taken in and trained was a blessing and that it's given her the opportunity to do things like save the world. Whereas her brother felt like it was a prison sentence. He felt like he was being used, that he's just a weapon or a tool that was being used by the GDA with no consideration to the fact of what he wants or any care for him and his sister. And again, I think that might have been born, maybe his resentment was born from when, we saw Kate say last season that every time one of her doubles dies, she feels that very personally. And the fact that clearly, I don't think Cecil and his people cared how many copies of her died, right? They kind of just think, it's just a copy, it's fine. But that's not the way she felt. So I think that probably maybe their indifference to that is probably what started Paul on his resentment journey of feeling like, okay, these people don't care about the fact that my sister can't handle this. Because even in their flashbacks, we see that like, it looks like he's a bit stronger than Kate is my point. Like, I think his powers are a little bit stronger than hers. He is a little bit stronger than hers. She was a little bit more of the softer one between the two of them. And so I got the impression that Paul was very protective of Kate. And that's one of the reasons why he probably began to grow to resent the GDA and what they were doing to her and to him. But, and that trust, he never trusted them, right? I really like that scene where they show the two of them looking like they're sleeping when he actually had a double watching the door just in case, right? So he was just never okay, right, with the situation. And we see that was the reason that he decided to break out when he could. And he expected his sister to go with him. And she's like, no, like, I'm good where I'm at. And she was like, you should have stayed. And he was like, no, like, I'm not happy here. So I think that was a pretty cool dichotomy of showing that the two of them are almost identical as far as what they're capable of doing, but they're both very different views on how they're using their abilities. And again, we heard Kate say to him that, oh, you're just being a tool for gangsters, you're a murderer. And he was like, yeah, well, you're just a tool for the GDA and you too are a murderer. So are we really so different? Or is it really our viewpoints? And yeah, they both had points is my point. Like, both of them had valid points. They are both being used by the organizations they're a part of. But I guess the difference is that Kate sees purpose in what she's doing, whereas Paul gives me a bit of I given up and I don't really, what's the word? It's not that he doesn't care, but I guess he just feels like this is like, if I'm going to be bad, I'm going to just be bad with a purpose, right? He doesn't like the hypocrisy anyways of the GDA. And I don't blame him on that. It's true. But I mean, for him thinking that an illegal organization is any less of liars is kind of naive of him. But then he did say something that was very true, which is like, do you really think that they're going to let me go anyways, or either of us? And that was probably the biggest truth that both of them kind of unspokenly know, is that, yeah, Kate can never just leave, really. I mean, she could, but Cecil will never stop watching her, right? She'll always be under the eyes of the GDA for the rest of her life, and vice versa. As it goes with underworld things, Paul's in for life. Like, he will always be a pawn of the order, one way or another. So anyways, it was interesting to get some background on them. A bit sad, but now that Paul is back out again, interesting that he let Kate know that he's out. I don't think that Kate's going to report him though, because that's still her brother, but we'll see. I'm pretty sure that they showed us a little bit of those two because it's going to come into a head at a later time. But yeah, it was interesting to get a little bit of background on those two and kind of how they ended up on different sides of the law, as it were. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. We didn't really get anything else from our space folks, or whether or not we're going to get any advancement on that, but I hope to hear about that later. Oh yeah, and then of course we just saw at the end that crime syndicate basically saying that the cement guy can keep the city, but he wants out of the order. But I'll see if that's true. I wonder, like, I feel like that wasn't just a throwaway scene. Like, I don't know why they would stick that in for no reason at all, unless to wrap up that whole thing. But my guess is that that's not the end. Machine Head, I don't think, is at all over it. And I do think that, as I said, with these types of things, it's usually a once in, never out. So we'll see whether or not he keeps his word and leaves the city alone. But I don't think that's really going to be the case. But we're just going to have to see. But yeah, all in all, it was an interesting episode. I hope you guys enjoyed watching along with me. If you did, please show some love, and I'll see you in the next one.